Hello, how's it going? Today we are going to learn how to make salt dough and then see all sorts of neat things that you can do with your salt dough. All right, so here we go. Okay, for the salt dough, you're going to need salt, any kind of salt will work, flour, just regular all-purpose flour, and water. So I am going to use 1 cup of flour, this is a 1/2 cup measure, so I'm going to use 1 cup of flour, 1/2 cup of salt, and then 1/2 cup of water. When you're adding the water, I have 1/2 cup measured out. You don't want to start with all of it. You want to just start with half of the amount of water. And then you're going to get right in there and mix it up. So what I did was 1 cup of flour, 1/2 cup of salt, and I have 1/2 cup of water, but I started with just half of that amount. So you can double that if you want to make more. It's not that hard to make, so you can always make more if you need more. After you do make it, you can store it in the refrigerator in a Ziploc bag or in a container for a couple of months. It's just kind of fun to play with, so you're just going to mix it all up. Okay, once your dough is made, you want to decide if you are going to leave it just this plain color, and once it dries, you can paint it afterwards, or you can add food coloring to it now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split mine in half. I'm going to add food coloring to some of it, and I'm going to leave the rest plain so that I can paint it after it dries. So a simple way to add food coloring to the dough is to put it in a bag if you have that. And then you're going to take your food coloring and you can just add food coloring to the bag and start with a few drops of whatever you're going to do. You can always add more. So I'm going to do some red and yellow. We'll see if we can get some orange. Alright, so I'm going to take it out of the bag and mix it however much you want to get whatever color you're trying to go for. I kind of like that it's a little tie-dyed-ish, a little streaked. So you have tons of options for your salt dough. There are so many different things that you can do. The first thing I'm going to show you is that you can roll this out. Alright, so for rolling this out, you're going to want to get a rolling pin or a cup that you can use to roll it out on. So get your dough, and you can just roll it out. I put some wax paper under here. Wax paper would work. If you have parchment paper, that will work. And whatever thickness you want, keep in mind that if you do it really thin, your little cutouts are going to be more delicate. And if you do it really thick, they're going to take a lot longer to dry, either air dry or in the oven. All right, so once you get it to the thickness you want, you're going to take your cookie cutter and push it down. Just going to separate this in half. So if you have a little stick you can use to cut it, or you can get a little spatula to help cut around. I'm sure you've played with Play-Doh before, so you can use whatever sort of tools you would like. There we go. And I made a little clover here. Hopefully you can see that. If you want it to be an ornament or something that you're going to hang, you can take a chopstick and you can poke a little hole into it. If you're going to bake these in the oven and you want the hole about halfway through, when you go to flip these over in the oven, you want to make sure that the hole is still there and poke it again. The salt dough tends to expand a little bit when you're baking it. One of the other options that I'm going to show you today is you could make beads that you could string onto a necklace. So any shaped bead that you want. I'm going to just do some simple little beads here. If you want to make it like a little cube, you can kind of push the sides in. So this is a lot thicker and it's going to take longer to dry. I'm going to let my cube bead here air dry. So don't forget, you want to poke a hole in it. You might have to reshape it a little after you poke a hole. If you're going to do that, it might help to leave it on your stick that you're using to help make your bead. So any shape that you can think of for your bead, and you can make them smaller too. All right, some other fun ideas. I rolled out another piece of dough here. If you want, you could cut out any shape that you wanted. I'm just going to use this tongue depressor stick here to cut out a shape, or you could cut out a letter. So I'm going to cut out a letter. All right, once you have your shape cut it out, you can put it on either wax paper if you're just going to let it air dry, or you can put it onto a baking sheet with parchment paper if you're going to just let it dry in the oven. So just get it to a spot that you don't have to touch it. And you can get a fork would work to make decorations in it. So if you have a fork and you just want to do a bunch of dots, toothpicks would work. A little skewer stick with a sharp end and a non-sharp end would work. Even your little stick, you can do lines with that. Those look kind of neat. And if you see that your dough is cracking, mine's getting a little dry right here. If you have a little bit of water, just put water on your fingertip. And you can just smooth out, give that dough a little bit more moisture and just smooth out any cracks or sharp edges that are starting to form. Okay? So have fun and get creative. All right, so for my animal, I'm gonna make a little turtle. I'm gonna get its shell. You get a little head. You can use these little sticks or a spoon to help you kind of just connect your pieces of your animal. You can also use your chopstick to make any textured details on your animal. So you could use this to do some little eyes. But you can paint all of that on there too, so it's up to you. Okay, so there's some little eyes. All right, so here's my little turtle. When you're doing this, it might be easier to just make it on a plate so that if you're adding details, you're not pushing them off with your finger every time you pick it up. So if you want to just do this on a little paper plate and put some wax paper on it, something that you'll be able to pull your little animal off of. All right, so you can either let them air dry or you can bake them in the oven. I will include our directions here. Okay, hopefully you found some neat things to make. So I baked a couple of these things here. This letter E I was hoping for needs a little bit more bake time. I'm gonna let my two animals air dry so that I don't lose any of the pattern. It definitely can puff up a little bit when they're baking. So if you're gonna bake, you wanna remember to pierce those holes again about 10 minutes into it, and then again in another 20 minutes, just so that you're able to put thread or yarn through them. And the same thing for your beads. Definitely make big enough holes. Some of my beads, the holes just closed up even though I punctured through them. All right. Thank you for joining me today. See you next time.